The hallway leading from the council chamber was eerily silent, the weight of the encounter pressing on Eliana, Gunnar, and Clara as they walked briskly. Omega padded close to Clara, his ears twitching as if sensing the tension still simmering in the air. "They'll send someone after us," Clara said, her voice low but firm. She clutched her staff of light tightly, her hazel eyes scanning the empty corridor. "They can try," Gunnar muttered, his tone sharp. His cybernetic arm flexed instinctively, the runes faintly glowing. "We've said our piece. If they can't make a decision, that's on them." Ahead, the glow of Alfheim's eternal light spilled through an archway, marking the way out. The three quickened their pace, but the sound of armoured boots echoed from behind, growing louder. "Hold!" a voice commanded, firm and unyielding. Gunnar stopped, his eye narrowing as he turned. Clara stepped closer, readying herself, and Eliana's grip tightened on her staff. A group of elven guards approached, their polished armour gleaming, their spears levelled with precision. "By order of the council, you are to remain within the grounds until deliberations are complete," the lead guard stated, his expression stern. Gunnar stepped forward, his presence radiating quiet authority. "We're not sticking around to watch them argue. If you've got a problem with that, I suggest you think very carefully about your next move." The guards hesitated, their stances faltering slightly, but the lead guard held firm. "Our orders are clear." "Enough!" Another voice cut through the tension. From a side corridor, a tall elf in captain's armour strode forward, his silver braid gleaming under the enchanted light. His face was lined with age and experience, his piercing green eyes holding the weight of someone who had seen much and judged fairly. The guards turned, their rigid postures softening slightly at his arrival. "Captain Letharian," the lead guard said, bowing his head. "We are following the council's—" "I know the orders," Letharian interrupted, his voice calm but commanding. He turned to Eliana, his expression softening. "Guardian Vale, your words in the chamber were powerful. And I respect what you've done for the realms." His gaze shifted to Gunnar. "And you. I've heard the stories of your battle with the Demon King. A lesser man wouldn't be standing here after such a fight." Gunnar inclined his head slightly, his demeanour guarded but respectful. "Then you know we're not ones to stand still while the world falls apart." Letharian nodded slowly. "I do, which is why I will not stop you." He turned to the guards, his tone firm. "Stand down. Let them pass." The guards hesitated, their spears lowering reluctantly as they stepped aside. Letharian gestured toward the archway. "Go, but tread carefully. Not everyone shares my view." Eliana paused, her gaze meeting Letharian's. "Thank you." He inclined his head, a faint smile breaking through his stoic demeanour. "May your path lead to balance, Guardian Vale." As twilight deepened over Eliana's residence, the faint glow of Alfheim's eternal light cast long shadows across the room. Inside, Gunnar leaned against the edge of a heavy oak table, his arms crossed, his expression dark and thoughtful. Clara stood nearby, her staff of light resting against her shoulder as she paced slowly, her hazel eyes fixed on the intricate map spread before them. "We can't keep fighting this war with scraps," Gunnar said, his voice low but firm. "If they're not willing to back us fully, we need to figure out how to do this on our own." Clara nodded, her brow furrowing. "The skirmishes on the borders are just the beginning. If the Black Dawn pushes further, Alfheim might not have the luxury of neutrality much longer." Eliana sat at the head of the table, her expression calm, but her fingers tapping lightly against her staff. "Agreed. But we need to tread carefully. Pushing too far without their support could undermine everything we've worked for." The knock at the door cut through the room's quiet intensity. Eliana rose gracefully, glancing at Gunnar and Clara. Omega growled softly from his spot by the fireplace, his ears twitching. "Expecting someone?" Clara asked, her tone wary. No, Eliana replied, her voice even. She moved to the door and opened it to reveal the senior council member. His silver hair caught the fading light, his expression grave yet lacking the sharp edge it had held in the chamber. "Guardian Vale," he said, inclining his head slightly. His gaze shifted to Gunnar and Clora inside. "May I come in?" Eliana stepped aside, her expression unreadable. "Of course." The senior council member entered, his eyes scanning the room before settling on the map spread across the table. "Strategizing already," he noted, his tone neutral but with a faint hint of respect. "I expected nothing less." "What's the verdict?" Gunnar asked, his voice steady but sharp. He didn't move from his position by the table, his piercing blue eye locked on the elf. The council member met his gaze, unflinching. "The council has reached a decision. Guardian Vale, you will be formally reprimanded for your actions. While your intentions were noble, your methods have raised concerns." He paused, letting the weight of the words settle before continuing. "However, the council recognizes the urgency of the threats you've presented. Your proposal for the gateway has been approved under strict conditions. It will be monitored jointly by Alfheim's guards and your Echo division." Eliana's shoulders relaxed slightly, though her expression remained guarded. "And the oversight?" The council member inclined his head. "A guardian will be assigned to oversee Earth and ensure balance is maintained." Clora's eyes narrowed. "And who gets that job? Someone who'll actually help? Or another mouthpiece for tradition?" The council member's lips twitched in the faintest smile. "I will take on this responsibility myself." The room fell silent, the gravity of his words settling over them. Gunnar straightened, his expression skeptical but intrigued. "You? Why?" "Because the stakes are too high to entrust this to anyone else," the council member replied. "And because I believe, despite my reservations, that this collaboration is necessary." Eliana studied him for a moment before nodding slowly. "Then perhaps we can move forward." "We'll see," the council member said, his voice carrying a quiet weight. He glanced at the map on the table again. "But if you are to continue this fight, you'll need more than approval. Resources, allies, and strategy. I suggest you begin preparing." Clora smirked faintly. "We already are." The senior council member turned back to Eliana, his expression softening slightly. "For what it's worth, Guardian Vale, your words today did not fall on deaf ears. But remember, the path you've chosen carries great risk. Do not falter." Eliana inclined her head, her voice quiet but firm. "I won't." As the council member turned to leave, Gunnar's voice cut through the quiet. "If you're serious about helping, you'd better be ready to get your hands dirty. This fight isn't like anything you've faced before." The council member paused at the door, glancing back with a faint smile. "I'll keep that in mind." The path to the artisan's enclave wound through a forest of ancient trees, their silver leaves shimmering under the eternal light of Alfheim. Eliana led the way, her staff in hand, its faint glow illuminating the trail ahead. Gunnar followed, Starbreaker strapped across his back, his cybernetic arm glinting faintly. Clora walked beside him, her staff of light upright, her expression thoughtful. "They won't be easy to persuade," Eliana said, glancing over her shoulder. "The artisans are proud of their craft and wary of outsiders." "I'm not here to make friends," Gunnar replied, his tone even. "I'll show them what's at stake. If they've got any sense, they'll see why this matters." Clora smirked faintly. "Diplomacy isn't exactly your strong suit." "It doesn't need to be," Gunnar countered. "The facts speak for themselves." Eliana slowed as the trees parted, revealing a sprawling enclave nestled within a valley. Intricate forges glowed with ethereal light, artisans moving with purpose among tables laden with enchanted weapons, tools and shimmering materials. The air buzzed with magic, heavy and vibrant. As they entered the enclave, the hum of activity faltered. Artisans turned to stare, their eyes narrowing at the sight of Gunnar and Clora. Whispers rippled through the crowd, and a tall elf with braided hair and a commanding presence stepped forward. "Aeliana Vale," the elf said, her voice cool but respectful. "What brings a guardian to our enclave?" Aeliana inclined her head. "Mylea, it's good to see you again. We've come with a request, one that may determine the future of not just Alfheim, but all realms." Mylea's gaze flicked to Gunnar and Clora, her expression skeptical. "And you bring mortals to our sacred ground for this?" "They are more than mortals," Aeliana replied, her tone firm. "They are warriors who have stood against forces even guardians hesitated to face, and they need your help." Mylea raised an eyebrow. "Help? We are artisans, not soldiers." Gunnar stepped forward, unstrapping Starbreaker and holding it with practiced ease. "And we're not asking you to fight," he said. "We're asking you to arm those who do." He placed the weapon on a nearby table, then produced 2 rounds, one enchanted, the other unenchanted. "This is what we're working with," he said, pointing to the plain round. "Standard ammunition. Effective against most threats, but useless against the supernatural." He picked up the enchanted round, the runes glowing faintly. "And this? This is what Eli, our technomancer, has to create. By hand. Every single round. It works, but it's slow. Too slow." Gunnar loaded both rounds into Starbreaker, turning to a nearby target, a thick slab of enchanted stone often used to test weapons. With a steady hand, he fired the unenchanted round. It ricocheted off harmlessly, leaving only a faint mark. Then he loaded the enchanted round. The weapon hummed as the runes activated, and when he fired, the slab cracked, a glowing fissure spreading across its surface. The artisans murmured, their expressions shifting from skepticism to intrigue. Clora stepped forward, her voice steady but carrying a note of urgency. "We're not asking for charity, we're asking for collaboration. The Black Dawn is growing stronger. Their reach extends beyond Earth, and it's only a matter of time before they set their sights here." She gestured to the forges around them. "You have the knowledge and the skill to make a difference, not just for us, but for Alfheim and every realm connected to it. If we lose this fight, it won't stop with Earth." Aeliana's tone softened as she addressed the artisans. "Your work has always been about more than crafting weapons. It's about preserving balance, protecting what matters. Gunnar and Clora represent that fight. They're asking for your help because they believe in the power of what you create." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. "We stand on the edge of a war that could shatter everything we hold dear. But with your aid, we can hold the line. We can fight back." Mylea studied them for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded toward Gunnar. "Your demonstration is compelling. But if we are to commit to this, we need assurances." "What kind of assurances?" Gunnar asked, his voice wary. "That our work will not be squandered," Mylea said, "and that Alfheim will be protected if this war comes to our borders." Gunnar glanced at Aeliana, then back at Mylea. "You have my word. If it comes to that, we'll stand with you." Mylea's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then we will consider your request." The crackling warmth of the artisan's forge house provided a stark contrast to the tense negotiations that had filled the day. Gunnar leaned back in his chair, a half-filled goblet of glowing elven wine in hand, his cybernetic fingers idly tapping against the rim. Across from him, Mylea sat with the poise of someone accustomed to leading, her sharp gaze occasionally flicking between her guests and the flickering hearth. "To partnerships forged in purpose," Mylea said, raising her goblet. Her tone held a note of guarded optimism, but the gesture was genuine. "To partnerships," Aeliana echoed, her voice calm but tinged with relief as she lifted her drink. Clora clinked her goblet against theirs, her hazel eyes bright with satisfaction. "And to keeping the Black Dawn at bay." Gunnar raised his glass slightly. "And to getting things done." They drank, the faint hum of magic in the elven wine adding an otherworldly warmth to the moment. Melia set her goblet down, her expression shifting to one of measured pragmatism. "You've convinced us, Guardian Vale," Melia said, her gaze shifting to Gunnar and Clora. "But convincing and executing are two very different things. When will you be ready to start sending supplies?" Gunnar leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "As soon as you are. The unenchanted rounds are ready for shipment. They'll need engraving and enchantment, but the stockpile is steady. I can have the first shipment heading your way within the week." Melia nodded thoughtfully. "Our forges are adaptable, but the volume you're asking for is ambitious. It will take time to establish a rhythm, especially with the level of precision required," Eliana interjected, her tone soothing. "The rhythm will come, Mylea. What matters is that the foundation is in place. The rest will follow." "Foundation or not," Melia said, her lips curving into a faint smirk, "you've brought us a mountain to climb." Clora shrugged with a grin. "Better a mountain than a battlefield." Melia leaned back, folding her arms as she studied Gunnar. "And what of security? These shipments will need safe passage. We can't afford to lose what we've worked for." "We've got that covered," Gunnar assured her. "Echo Division has transport routes secured, and my team knows how to keep things quiet. We'll get the ammo to you without anyone catching on." Melia raised an eyebrow. "Your confidence is reassuring, if not entirely convincing. But I'll trust that you've thought this through." Clora chuckled softly. "Trust me, he has. Gunnar's the kind of guy who plans 3 steps ahead. Most of the time." Gunnar shot her a wry look. 4 steps, actually." Melia allowed herself a faint smile before her tone turned serious again. "We'll begin preparations immediately. But remember, our resources aren't infinite. If this conflict grows beyond what you've described—" "It won't," Gunnar interrupted, his voice firm, "because we'll stop it before it does." The conversation shifted to lighter topics as the night wore on, the tension of the day giving way to a rare moment of camaraderie. Mylea recounted tales of the artisan's triumphs in crafting legendary weapons, while Eliana shared glimpses of Alfheim's history with her usual eloquence. Clora leaned back in her chair, her smile softening as she watched Gunnar and Eliana trade dry humour with Mylea. It was a rare thing seeing Gunnar's guarded exterior crack, even slightly. When the goblets were emptied and the hour grew late, Melia rose, her expression thoughtful. "This partnership may prove to be one of the most important we've ever forged. Let's not squander it." Gunnar nodded, his tone steady. "We won't." As they left the forge house, the weight of their task lingered, but so did a sense of hope. For the first time in weeks, it felt like they were gaining ground, and they'd need every inch of it for the battle to come. The ride back to the warehouse was silent, the hum of the engine the only sound between them. Ashley sat in the passenger seat, her green eyes scanning the darkened roads ahead. Beside her, Desera kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting near her holstered sidearm, her grey eyes sharp and calculating. "I still don't buy it," Desera said finally, breaking the silence. "Homeland swoops in with all the right credentials, but it wasn't them. Something doesn't add up." Ashley nodded, her voice calm but laced with frustration. They were too precise, too prepared. Whoever they were, they knew exactly what they were doing and what they were looking for. Desera's prosthetic leg whirred faintly as she adjusted her position. "Then we find what they missed." The warehouse loomed ahead, its silhouette stark against the night sky. The faint glow of distant streetlights barely reached its walls, giving the building an ominous presence. The 2 women exited the vehicle, their steps quiet and deliberate as they approached the entrance. Inside, the air was heavy with the lingering scent of chemicals and dust. Ashley flicked on a compact flashlight, its beam cutting through the shadows. Desera moved ahead, her sniper-trained eyes scanning the space with practiced precision. "Over here," Ashley said, crouching near the spot where the detainee had been apprehended. The faint outline of scuffle marks was still visible on the dusty floor. Desiree knelt beside her, her fingers brushing against a faint metallic glint. She picked it up, holding it to the light. A shard of some kind. Looks like part of a talisman. Ashley frowned, taking it from her. The edges of the shard were etched with faint runes, their patterns jagged and uneven, as if the object had been forcibly broken. Definitely enchanted. But why would they leave something like this behind? Maybe they didn't know they dropped it, Desiree said, her tone skeptical. Or maybe they didn't care. Either way, it's worth analysing. Ashley stood, her flashlight catching something else, a faint trail of dark stains leading deeper into the warehouse. She motioned to Desiree, her voice low. Blood. They followed the trail, moving cautiously through the maze of crates and machinery. It ended abruptly near a set of metal shelves where the stains pooled at the base. Desiree crouched, her prosthetic leg adjusting silently as she examined the area. Someone was injured here, she muttered, but there's no sign of a body or anyone being dragged. Ashley's flashlight beam caught something wedged between the shelves, a scrap of fabric. She pulled it free, holding it up. The material was dark and heavy, marked with an unfamiliar sigil, stitched into the corner. That's not from the detainee, Ashley said, her voice tinged with curiosity. It's too deliberate. Desiree frowned, taking the fabric and inspecting the sigil closely. This looks familiar. I've seen something like this before, but I can't place where. Think it's tied to whoever took him? Ashley asked. Either that or someone else entirely is watching us, Desiree replied grimly. And if that's the case, we've got bigger problems. The two women exchanged a look, unspoken agreement passing between them. Ashley reached for her comm device, her voice steady. Eli, we need you to take a look at something. We've got an enchanted shard and some kind of sigil-marked fabric. Can you meet us at the lab? Eli's voice crackled over the comms, calm but focused. On my way. Desiree stood, tucking the shard and fabric into a secure pouch. Let's get out of here before we find something, or someone, we're not ready for. Ashley nodded, her hand resting on her holstered weapon as they made their way back to the vehicle. The warehouse loomed behind them, its shadows heavy with unanswered questions. As Desiree and Ashley turned to leave, a loud crash shattered the silence. Both women froze, their instincts kicking in as their hands moved to their weapons. The noise had come from a small rusted shed tucked into the corner of the warehouse lot. Desiree's grey eyes narrowed. You hear that? Ashley nodded, her voice low. Yeah, let's check it out. They approached the shed cautiously, their steps light but deliberate. The faint creak of the wind against the metal walls did little to mask the occasional thud coming from inside. Desiree gestured for Ashley to circle around while she moved toward the door. On 3, Desiree whispered, her hand on the latch. 1, 2. She yanked the door open on 3, her sidearm raised, but what they found inside was far from what they expected. A figure crouched in the corner, their back pressed against the wall. They were trembling, their clothes dirty and torn, and their face was obscured by a hood. The faint glow of Ashley's flashlight illuminated their sharp, frightened eyes, human, but wild with panic. Hey! Desiree barked, her voice firm. Step out where we can see you. The figure flinched at her tone, letting out a small, high-pitched scream before bolting toward the door. Ashley stepped into their path, her stance wide and ready, but the intruder ducked under her arm with surprising speed. Stop! Ashley shouted, spinning to give chase. The figure darted out of the shed and across the lot, their movements erratic. Desiree and Ashley pursued, their boots pounding against the cracked pavement. Despite their speed and training, the intruder was fast, almost unnaturally so. They veered toward the edge of the lot, disappearing into the shadows of the surrounding woods. Desiree stopped at the tree line, her chest heaving as she scanned the darkness. Damn it! She muttered, lowering her weapon. That wasn't normal. Ashley caught up, her breathing steady but her frustration clear. They knew we were here, probably watching us the whole time. Desera nodded, her expression grim. And they didn't want to be found. Ashley glanced back toward the shed, the flashlight still in her hand. Let's see if they left anything. Returning to the shed, the two women searched the cramped space thoroughly. Among the discarded scraps and tools, Ashley found a crumpled piece of paper tucked behind an old box. She unfolded it carefully, revealing a hastily drawn map marked with strange symbols. Looks like someone's been keeping tabs on this place, she said, showing it to Desera. Desera studied the map, her frown deepening. That's not just surveillance, these markings. They're coordinates. Coordinates for what? Ashley asked. Desera shook her head. Let's get this to Eli. If anyone can figure it out, it's her. As they stepped out of the shed, Desera glanced back at the woods, her hand tightening around her weapon. Whoever that was, they weren't just scared, they were running from something. Ashley nodded, her expression unreadable. Yeah. The question is, what? The shed creaked in the wind, the shadows around them heavy with unanswered questions as they returned to their vehicle. The map and the encounter with the mysterious intruder only deepened the enigma surrounding the detainee's disappearance. The drive back to the workshop was steeped in silence, the hum of the engine the only sound as Desera focused on the road. Ashley sat beside her, the crumpled map clutched tightly in her hands, her green eyes fixed on the passing trees outside. You think that guy was connected to the detainee? Ashley finally asked, breaking the silence. Desera's grey eyes flicked to her briefly. Could be. Or they're part of something bigger. Either way, they knew something they didn't want us finding out. Ashley nodded, her grip on the map tightening. And those symbols? They're not random. They mean something. Eli'll figure it out, Desera replied, her voice steady but edged with tension. If anyone can make sense of this, it's her. The familiar sight of the workshop came into view, its sprawling structure a comforting but imposing presence in the dark. As they pulled into the secured perimeter, the wards shimmered faintly, reacting to the vehicle's magical signature before allowing them through. Desera parked near the main entrance, shutting off the engine with a low hum. Let's get this to Eli, she said, stepping out of the vehicle. Ashley followed, tucking the map securely into her jacket. And we need to tell the others about what we found. That shed wasn't random. Inside the workshop, the buzz of activity was subdued. The team scattered across various tasks. Eli was in her lab, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dim light as she worked on a device humming with arcane energy. Darren leaned against a nearby workbench, fiddling with his enchanted shotgun, while Karina and Shade were discussing their findings from the warehouse in a quieter corner. Got something for you, Desera announced, walking into the room with Ashley close behind. Eli looked up, her violet eyes sharp and inquisitive. What is it? Ashley pulled the map from her jacket and handed it to Eli. We found this in a shed at the warehouse. It's a map, marked with what looks like coordinates and some kind of symbols. Definitely enchanted. Eli took the map, her fingers brushing over the faintly glowing runes. Interesting, she murmured, her tone thoughtful. This will take some time to decipher, but I'll get on it right away. What about the shed? Darren asked, his dark eyes narrowing. You two look like you saw a ghost. Not a ghost, Desera said, leaning against the workbench. A guy, hiding, scared out of his mind. And, Karina pressed, her voice calm but curious. And he bolted before we could get anything out of him, Desera admitted, frustration flickering in her eyes. Fast, too. Almost inhuman. Shade's expression darkened. Inhuman or supernatural? Not sure, Ashley replied, folding her arms. But whoever he was, he left in a hurry, like he was running from something or someone. Gunnar wasn't there to direct them, and the absence of their leader was keenly felt. Desera turned to the group, her tone firm. We need to figure out who this guy was and what those coordinates mean. If he's tied to the detainee, this could lead us straight to whoever took him. Darren shrugged, slinging his shotgun over his shoulder. Or it could be a trap. You ever think of that? Ashley smirked faintly. We think of everything, Darren. That's why you love us. Eli was already focused on the map, her glowing orb hovering close as she examined the runes. I'll start decoding this now. If there's anything useful, I'll let you know. DeSara nodded, her gaze sweeping over the group. We don't move until we have more intel. For now, stay sharp. Whoever's behind this isn't done. As the team dispersed, the workshop hummed quietly with energy, its wards flickering faintly against the darkness outside. DeSara and Ashley exchanged a glance before heading toward their quarters, their thoughts still on the encounter at the warehouse. We're getting closer, Ashley said softly, her voice tinged with determination. DeSara's expression was grim but resolute. Closer to what, though? The question lingered as the night deepened, the mysteries surrounding the detainee growing heavier with every step they took. The workshop was quiet except for the faint hum of magical energy emanating from Eli's lab. The technomancer sat at her desk, her violet eyes glowing faintly as she studied the map under a magnifying lens. Her fingers moved deftly, tracing the runes and symbols, while her glowing orb hovered nearby, projecting patterns and calculations into the air. After hours of work, she leaned back, her expression a mix of intrigue and unease. Desra, Ashley, and Darren entered the lab at her summons, their curiosity piqued by the urgency in her message. What did you find? DeSara asked, leaning against the doorframe. Eli gestured to the map, now spread out under a layer of holographic projections. The symbols aren't just coordinates, they're markers. Whoever created this was mapping out ley lines, points of intersecting magical energy. Ashley frowned. Ley lines? Why would someone map those out? Eli pointed to a glowing section of the map where several runes converged. Because this spot, right here, is a nexus, a place where the energy is strongest. If someone wanted to harness or disrupt magical energy, this would be the place to do it. Darren crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. So what? Someone's planning a magical joyride? Eli shook her head, her silver hair catching the dim light. Not just a joyride. These markings suggest something much darker. They're designed to focus energy, possibly even weaponize it. DeSara's jaw tightened. And the coordinates? Where's this nexus? Eli tapped the map and the holographic projection shifted to show a location on Earth. It's an abandoned industrial site just outside of the Shadow Realm Bar's territory. Ashley exchanged a glance with DeSara. That can't be a coincidence. It's not, Eli said firmly. Whoever took our detainee might be tied to this. The question is, why are they so interested in disrupting magical energy? DeSara stepped closer to the map, her grey eyes scanning the details. We need to check this out. If this nexus is active, it could explain a lot, like how they're moving so fast and staying hidden. Ashley nodded. And if it's connected to the drug, this might be our chance to shut it down at the source. Darren smirked faintly. Let me guess, you want me to play nice with Rose again? Desra's lips twitched in a rare smile. You're the one she likes, Darren. Use that charm of yours. Eli interjected, her tone serious. Be careful. Whoever's behind this isn't playing around. If they're using ley lines, they've got serious magical knowledge. And power. DeSara nodded, her expression resolute. Then we'd better be ready for whatever's waiting for us.
All right, you've made it this far. That means either you like what you're seeing, or you're lost. Either way, no harm in sticking around, right? Go on, hit that subscribe button, join the team, and while you're at it, hit like, because, let's be honest, you're already invested. And the bell? That's for you if you don't want to miss any of the action. You wouldn't want me to come find you. See you soon, and remember, once you're in, you're family.